Angry guy here, and women are begging the government for socialism. Women are begging the government for socialism. Let's just go ahead and jump right into this article. So, as you guys can see on the screen, this is pretty intriguing. It says new survey shows Gen Z is not thrilled about capitalism. And here's a sign: capitalism isn't working. Another world is possible, and it shows a long unemployment office in that picture. So the new survey shows that Gen Z, the newest generation of young professionals, they're not really professionals. They can't read, write, do simple math, and have no communication skills. They lack soft skills and hard skills. They're not professionals. They're grifters. Like what are those terrible people? Like is it Kate? Not Kate. Kate's a good person. Like Megan and Harry. They're total grifters. But yeah, Gen Z, the newest generation of young professionals, is known for their love of technology, trendy fashion choices, and now a distrust of capitalism. According to a new survey conducted by Business Insider, many Gen Zers actually reported that they prefer socialism as opposed to capitalism in regard to economic structure, and their reasoning is quite interesting. So, before diving into the next generation's collective opinions on the economy, it's first crucial to understand what the difference between these two systems is. Of course, there are many variations of both, but the general idea is that capitalism is a system which trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit, whereas socialism advocates for sale and industry to be owned and regulated by the community, not the individual. Basically, they would take away the rights of people like me to run my business and effectively take control of my business. This is a frightening notion. This is socialism. All right. So instead of a private individual being able to own and operate their business, all right. So instead of private owners for profit, whereas so I'll read that again. Capitalism is a system in which trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit, right? Whereas socialism advocates for sale and industry to be owned and regulated by the community, not the individual. Sale and owners. What the heck is this? This is madness. Owned and regulated? My God. So they would have ownership over my business. They could take whatever they want from me. Guys, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. Like, who wants to live under this? Oh, wait, Gen Z. Since its inception in 1776, the United States has boasted about its successful capitalist economy, and Americans have historically agreed with the idea that capitalism created the country itself, and this system defines the American dream. However, it now seems that the younger generation doesn't agree. What they're actually pushing for are measures that are more restrictive than the CCP. Because over there, you actually do have a form of capitalism. It's because of capitalism why they've been able to build that country out. Gen Z is looking for something more in line with communism. In July 2023, Business Insider asked more than 1,800 Americans, including over 600 Gen Zers, a few questions regarding how they feel about work, money, and connection. Specifically, they asked them how they felt about capitalism versus socialism, and while 42% reported that they didn't have a preference or didn't know how they felt, 29% agreed that they would prefer socialism over capitalism. Gen Zers are just different. At almost 30%, Gen Zers had the highest percentage of people of any generation who disagreed with capitalism in favor of socialism, so even higher than the millennials. And in general, it seems that the reason why so many of the younger generation feel this way is because they are frustrated with widespread economic inequality throughout the country. This group of people are jokers because they don't want to work even more than 5 hours a day or 4 hours a day, and they don't even want to work every day. Guys, what they're fighting for is for someone else to do the work for them and allow them to have stress-free lives where basically everything is provided for them. This is where they're headed. Where they're headed is basically in a place where they want to say that work should be a choice. You should have the choice if you want to work or not. You should be able to choose if you want to work or not. And and housing, utilities, clothing, food, basically all necessities of life should be provided to you by the government. And then from there, you can decide if you want to work or not. Now, let me make this very clear. There are many other countries that where the government does provide, more to the people in the country, if necessary. So, for example, if you're homeless or so forth, they'll help take care of you. But what Gen Z is talking about is literally having the option to work or not work. In other words, it's not a matter of, I'm not doing well in life and I need help. So the government will help me get me back on my feet. They're not talking about that. They're literally saying that you should be able to choose if you work or not. So you should basically automatically be able to apply and receive money from the government, or it should just come to you naturally as a part of your livelihood. So you should receive money from the government. You should receive housing from the government. You shouldn't have to argue for these things should simply be handed to you. And you should then decide whether you work or not. So Gen Z does not actually want to contribute anything to society. They want to underserve society. And these are the same people that think that we cannot survive without them as a society. Gen Z are only 15 years older than the millennials. It's like, but of course, they're so bad at math that they cannot comprehend that their blip of a generation, which is, by the way, smaller than the millennials, are not really necessary. They think that the world will come to an end if they don't exist and they don't have children. They've lost their minds. They're only a 15-year generation. Really, a generation should be longer. But if we're measuring them, 15 years. Okay, Gen Alpha is right behind them. A lot of these Gen Zers don't even realize that within 10 years, many of them will have now reached an age where they're no longer even desirable to a lot of men. So, for example, in 10 years, I'll be 50. In 10 years, I'll be 50, and the youngest Gen Alphas, the generation after Gen Z, will be around 23, 24. So when I'm 50 years old, I'm still young for my age. I'm still young as a man. All right. So if I'm making a good amount of money, I have resources, I have wisdom, I take care of myself, I look good. Why do you think I'm going to be looking for a woman in her 30s? I'll be looking for a woman who's maybe in her mid 20s, all right, or in her early 20s, and the Gen Zers are going to go, ew, how dare you, guys? This is they don't understand reality. Gen Z does not understand reality because many of them will now be firmly in their 30s, pushing 40 in 10 years. Okay, the oldest Gen Zers will be around 36, 37 in 10 years from now. So they'll be pushing 40 in 10 years. And the youngest will be approaching their late 20s. Okay? So it'll be a young man's game. It'll be a young woman's game. So these people don't understand that they're not necessary. They are not necessary at all. And most men throughout history have not had children. So it's kind of like they don't get it that they can be completely passed over. Completely passed over. They are not necessary for survival of mankind. But they're so crazy and narcissistic that they can't see this. So, and in general, it seems that the reason why so many of the younger generation feel this way is because they are frustrated with widespread economic inequality throughout the country. They're full of crap. Full of crap. Okay, so what Gen Zers have to say? One Gen Zer, Mariana Picora, because of course it's very much young women. The Gen Z guys are also terrible, but this is very much Gen Z women. Mariana Picora, who works as the communication director of Voters for Tomorrow, explained, seeing corporate greed in the news every single day makes it understandable that we would want something better. It seems that their problem doesn't lie with the hyper wealthy, but with the fact that there isn't enough help for those at the bottom. What's problematic about Gen Z, what they don't realize is that the market can correct itself. People vote with their dollars. Is it very difficult what we're going through right now with hyperinflation? Absolutely. Is corporate greed a massive issue right now? Absolutely. But what they don't understand is how important the free market is. Because if these companies price themselves out of the average consumer, what will ultimately end up happening is that someone will come in and create competition. For example, McDonald's is charging ridiculous amounts for food right now. The fast food restaurant is charging ridiculous amounts for food right now. Like it's so crazy that you could literally go to a nice restaurant and pay for a meal for two, and at a nice restaurant, and compared to what and it would be around the same as ordering just a couple of things at McDonald's. Like that's how it's like you can literally order a burger, a drink, and a fries from McDonald's, and that'll run you about $15 for a burger, a drink, and fries. An apple pie from McDonald's, that's like what two that's like 250. So this is how capitalism works. There are always corrections. So right now, there will eventually be a correction. I don't think things will ever be super cheap again, but there will be a correction because people will see an opportunity and they'll move in. For example, housing and food are super expensive. So there will be those who will see that as an opportunity to find a ways to provide affordable housing at a price significantly lower than what the market is currently offering, and provide food to people at a price that is significantly lower than what the market is currently offering. And these companies will get what's coming to them. Sure, the companies are not paying employees what they should be paying, but keep in mind, people choose to take these jobs. And as people are waking up, they're realizing I don't have to have this job. I'll walk out. So what ends up happening is they're taking advantage of people right now, but people are going to start quitting these jobs. They're going to walk away, making $50,000 in an economy that requires $100,000 salary to even just barely survive. People are going to say, I can't do this job anymore. I'm not making enough money. I would be better off going on public assistance, quitting this job, getting Medicaid, and going on public assistance. And when the market gets to that point and people start doing this, they have to increase what they're paying people. They absolutely do. Even if they offer AI, they still have to pay more. Even using AI, because it's not people. AI is not going to replace people. People using AI will replace people. And companies that try to run their entire companies, there's new guys. I've said that we're moving away. So we're firmly in the gig economy right now, where you have these iPad kids terrorizing society, aka Gen Z, doing all these gig economy jobs. But we're going to be transitioning now to the creator economy. And the creator economy, because the gig economy is beginning to mature. Not only is it beginning to mature, which has happened rapidly, but it's beginning to stagnate a bit. So while there's money to be made in the gig economy, we're entering a period where there's more labor than demand. So you have more labor in the gig economy than there is demand for this labor, and as a result of that will actually reduce the amount of money that some people make. What we're entering is into the creator economy, where you have to create value for yourself and create value for others, something that these people don't understand. So this means, for example, you look at YouTube and you have this guy named Nick. He's a dancing weatherman, and he creates a lot of value for the company he works for. He's creating additional value. So it's not going to be enough to be a weatherman anymore. You better know how to dance, boy. Dance. Come on, I'm serious. I'm not joking around. You want one of these comfy jobs? What can you do? Al Roker was one of the first people to do this. Al Roker this guy is now he's an anchor or whatever. Because Al Roker was known as the funny fat weatherman, and he brought personality to the job. He brought additional value. He was one of the prototypes for this type of thing, where you bring additional value to the position. You know something intriguing? Here's what I'm thinking right now. Even if the story of Adam and Eve is correct, and there was the Garden of Eden, Do you really think that God was going to leave mankind in the Garden of Eden for all of eternity? Like, okay, if you behave yourself, kids, you don't ever have to leave the garden, and you're going to stay here in the garden, and you'll be safe in the garden forever. Sure, there's a great big world out there, but you're not going to go out into the world. You're going to stay in the garden where it's safe forever. Do you really think that? Think about this. God gave Adam a job to do, telling him to name the animals and to do a bunch of different things, and it was Eve's job to be his helper. So, are you telling me that Adam would just spend eternity in the garden doing that, walking around naked and naming animals? And he would look. Here's what I believe: God is a teacher, and he would have taught Adam, and he would have shown Adam things just like he did when they were expelled from the garden. What I honestly believe is that maybe they may not have been expelled from the garden, but they eventually, mankind would have to enter the real world. And the world is a harsh world. The world is a dangerous world out there. While things in the garden were perfect, that doesn't say that things in the rest of the world were perfect. The Christians try to act like the world outside of the garden became hostile towards mankind after sin. Like, oh, everything was peaches and cream, and before they left the garden, the world of the world outside of the garden was just as wonderful as the world inside the garden. Y'all really believe that? Y'all really believe there were no thorns outside of the garden and the rest of the world was just a big extension of the garden? And the moment they sinned, they stepped outside of the garden and the world outside the garden was just turned hostile against them? I don't know if that's the truth. The world has always been a harsh place to live. And they were going to have to be faced with the reality of the world at some point. Regardless of sin, regardless if Adam and Eve had sinned in the garden, even if they had not ate the fruit and gained the knowledge, when they stepped outside of the garden, they still may very well have committed acts of sin. For example, taking, when what's his name, when Cain took the life of his brother, are we to believe that such a scenario could never have happened if original sin never occurred? Here's what I'm getting at. The very act of Eve choosing to eat the fruit was an act of sin and defiance of God. So even without the knowledge of the fruit, she made the decision that she wanted the power of God. Think about the logistics of this. She sinned before she had any knowledge of sin, of good and evil. Use your heads. God told them, don't do this. Hence, it was an act of defiance. It was an act of sin. It was an act of rebellion. It was an act of disobedience. So the very act of doing this was an act of sin. And they made the choice to sin before they ate the actual fruit. So maybe they would have gained some awareness, some conscious awareness of the world around them, but they chose to sin before they did anything. Hence, sin had to have existed before they ate the fruit because they made the conscious decision to sin before they took the action to sin. And they chose to sin because of what they wanted. Adam sinned because he was a simp, and Eve sinned because she wanted to be God. She wanted what God had. Even though she had everything, it still wasn't good enough. She wanted more, even though she didn't know what that was. This is a very intriguing topic. Very, very intriguing topic. What do you guys think regarding all of this? Women are begging the government for socialism. Let me know what you guys think regarding everything we discussed here in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA and walking away. And cheers.